Well, Senator, thank you so much for making the time today.
You
I
bet.
appreciate it. I want to start right off the bat with your visit to the California City ICE Detention Facility Center. We heard back from Core Civic today, and in response to you and Senator Padilla, they said, quote, any claim of water quality issues is patently false. They said the staff and the local community all get the same water as the detainees there, and that they get nutritious meals 3 times a day. They have a continuum of healthcare services. So that is their response. What is your reaction based on what you saw on the ground at the facility?
Well, what the detainees told us is that the water smells bad, and when they drink it, they often get a stomach ache as a result. Others describe mold in their food. But frankly, the most significant concern were people who couldn't get the medical care that they needed. I asked the prison authorities, not prison, well, it is a prison, but it's a detention facility. What happens if someone is diabetic? How do you find out they're diabetic? How do you make sure they get their insulin? And they assured me, just as the statement you read, we've got it all under control. It's all taken care of. But when I talked to the detainees, one of the first I talked to said that she had been in detention there for 2 months. She was diabetic, and despite repeated requests, she has yet to get her medicine. That's really a problem. That's really potentially life-threatening. So we heard any number of problems with the provision of medical care. That was my paramount concern.
So what you saw doesn't really give you confidence in the statement that they've provided?
No, I mean, this is what we hear from the DHS authorities all the time. When you see, whether it's the shooting of Renee Good, in which the Secretary of Homeland Security, not knowing anything about the facts or circumstances, calls this woman some kind of domestic terrorist, you just hear rampant falsehood. You hear these false proclamations that everything is great, everything is perfect, everything is flawless, and none of it ends up being true. Here, all we can judge on, because there is no oversight of these agencies. The Justice Department is unwilling to do it. Departments aren't doing it themselves. The inspector generals who are supposed to be doing that, rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, they've been fired and replaced by sycophants. So you really can't rely on representations from these agencies anymore.
On the topic of oversight, Senator, I'm curious what concrete oversight steps you will push for within the next year or a couple of months to kind of ensure and prove to Californians that conditions are actually going to be improving under your leadership and other, state and federal leaders. And also your message to folks who are doing everything by the book and are still getting picked up or are fearful of getting picked up at routine immigration check-ins.
Well, this was one of the heartbreaking parts of the visit yesterday, which is we were talking with people who by and large got picked up when they were at their immigration appointments. So they're supposed to check in, they go to check in, and instead of proceeding with their petitions, they're arrested, they're detained sometimes for weeks or months at a time, and then they're deported. Many just give up because the conditions in which they're in are so appalling to them that they would rather just self-deport. What people need to realize about the folks we met with yesterday is the vast majority of them have never committed a violent crime. The vast majority of them has never committed a crime, apart from being undocumented. So these are folks who were plucked out of productive roles in society. We talked to small business people. We talked to somebody who worked at LAX. They had a normal life until they went to an appointment or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, picked up, and now they're spending weeks away from their family in this kind of a prison. And so it's heartbreaking and unnecessary, but it is what it is.
You said no
I'm sorry. In terms of oversight, while we're in the minority in Congress, we can do the kind of oversight we did yesterday. We don't have the power of compulsion. We can't subpoena the authorities to find out, did you provide this medicine that you said? What kind of complaints are you receiving? What kind of grievances are coming forward? We can't get any of those materials that we would need to do real oversight. But if the majority changes in November, then suddenly we can do the oversight. We can make sure that we know the truth about conditions and whether people are getting the treatment that they deserve as human beings.
So you're hinting at 2026. On that note, being in Sacramento today, I know you were able to meet with a few of our legislators. Who were you able to meet with, and what priorities were discussed? Because yesterday, in light of the first anniversary or the anniversary of the second Trump administration, a lot of Republican lawmakers said if California wants to take a stand against the Trump administration, we have to do better as a state, and we have to better deliver to prove that we are, in fact, leading the nation. So again, looking towards 2026, what priorities were discussed with lawmakers here today?
Yeah. I met with the different caucuses, the Assembly Democratic Caucus and the Senate Caucus and the Black Caucus and Hispanic Caucus, the AANHPI Caucus. So I met with a broad range of legislators, and some of the focus was on housing. I talked to them about my federal housing legislation, the Housing Boom Act, designed to build millions and millions of new units of housing. They talked to me about the challenges they have. I had breakfast with the mayor of Sacramento, and we talked about some of the small modular housing that is a part of the solution. So we also talked extensively about health care. The state is going to have to dig out from a big hole that the federal government has put them in. The passage of that big, beautiful bill that the president calls took $1 trillion out of health care. It's going to mean millions of people lose access to health care. There's no way that any state can make up for that. So they're going to have to make the painful decision of how do they deal with the loss of all that revenue. We also talked about, the immigration policies of the administration, about the fear in our communities, about masked agents grabbing people off the street, citizens, non-citizens, and the trauma it's inflicting on California families.
What about in terms of housing, big investors specifically, because that's actually something we're seeing the governor and the president aligned on when it comes to making sure big investors can't buy up all the single family homes and then rent them out?
Yeah. Well, this was also a topic of the conversation, and that is, how does an ordinary family compete with an investment bank when it comes to buying a home? And we're also seeing, and some of this is AI empowered, large commercial landlords that own multiple properties being able to set rents by using software devices that effectively price fix. And that just raises everyone's rent. So I think there's a lot of interest in trying to crack down on this. Some bipartisan interest. In terms of the president's comments, I will believe it when I see it. He makes a lot of statements and doesn't live up to most of them. So if he's willing to try to increase the supply of housing, and he's made comments along that line too, this is something we can work on together. But so far, the administration's actions have really moved the problem in the wrong direction. They've raised housing costs. By deporting construction workers, you're raising housing costs. By putting tariffs on foreign goods, you're raising building material costs. So housing costs, like everything else, have just been going up.
On Medi-Cal and CalFresh, does the state budget deficit concern you, Senator? Because the administration admitted that while the $1.4 billion additional dollars are spending in the next budget, it's for administrative costs. They can't backfill for the individuals that will be impacted because of the deficit. So what is your reaction to that?
It's a real problem. People are going to go hungry. There's just no way individual states that don't have the budget flexibility of the federal government, they have to balance their budget. They can't be out of balance. So it's going to mean draconian cuts, and they're just, I think, going to do the very best they can. The federal level, we ought to try to mitigate the harms we've already done by providing some of those resources that we clawed back in that big ugly bill. So those discussions are going on as a part of the appropriation process in Congress. We hope to restore some of the funding we've taken away from the states, but it's going to be very painful. And to your point earlier, and this has been part of our conversations today too, we need to make sure that we can demonstrate we can get things done in California, that we can build housing, for example, that we can build it effectively and quickly and affordably. We've got to be able to get things done, and there has been too much regulatory and bureaucratic impediments to moving quickly, to creating new jobs here, to doing manufacturing here, to bringing down the cost of housing here. That's on us to fix, and that has to be part of our positive agenda.
But how problematic is the deficit? Because it's a broad question, I know, but that is the big concern along party lines, really, or across party lines, excuse me.
It's a huge problem. There's really no sugarcoating it. And when you make a massive cut to healthcare, what you see is millions of people lose their health insurance. You see hospitals close, you see clinics close, and there is no way to avoid the conclusion because you can document it. People lose their lives because of it. This person couldn't get to a hospital in time because that hospital was no longer open. This person didn't get their cancer diagnosis a year ago when they should have because they lost their insurance, and they didn't discover they had cancer until they showed up in the ER. When if they'd had a mammogram or they had some other test, they could have been treated and their life could have been saved. So this is going to cost people's lives, and we only get one life. And it's a hell of a price to pay for a tax cut for very wealthy people and large corporations, because that's where the money went.
Going back to enforcement, immigration enforcement, you said aggressive enforcement breeds suspicion and fear in immigrant communities, often leading them to missing out on work for fear of enforcement. How do you balance that concern with voters who want that tougher enforcement and say that's exactly what they voted for with this administration?
Well, I think what people voted for was they wanted a secure border, and they wanted to make sure that people who are here undocumented who committed serious crimes would be deported. There's a lot of bipartisan agreement on those priorities. But what we're seeing now with the militarization of our cities, deploying armed ICE officers or the military in ways that are designed to provoke a reaction, designed to cause controversy and conflict, to stoke it for political purposes, nobody wanted that. I mean, maybe this president wanted. That is the result of his policies. But nobody voted for that, I don't think. And it's the result, it's the reason why the president's support among the public has plummeted, including on immigration, which when he came into office, he had high approval. Now he is unpopular on immigration because he's gone too far, causing too much chaos, causing too much harm to ordinary people, not violent criminals.
Senator, that's it for me. Thank you so much. Anything I missed? Anything you'd like to add, Senator?
I think you covered it.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.